Aggelos harkens back to the Master System and Mega Drive days with a very on-the-nose tribute to the Wonder Boy series, and maybe a dash of Zelda 2 for seasoning. You play as a swordsman, equipping better gear, exploring dungeons and traveling the world in order to restore peace. While plain and simple in story, gameplay, and design, things ramp up quicker than you would expect, leaving Aggelos a challenging, fun, and rewarding game if you stick with it. It's a fairly short but fun time, and worth a look if you like old-school RPG action platformers, with a fair $15 price tag. But that's not all you want to hear, is it? There is plenty more that I want to discuss, plot points and surprises included, so if you don't want spoilers, now's the time to bow out. Otherwise, let's get into this game and explain why I bothered completing it 3 times, getting saltier with each playthrough. My first introduction to Aggelos was via Mega G-Wolf, who played the demo through his channel. Having recently played Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap remake on Switch, and finding this whole action RPG platformer series interesting, I'd figured I'd give the demo a shot. I played through it, enjoyed it, and then completely forgot it existed. I'm not saying it wasn't memorable, but the demo felt like such a complete experience that I never really clamored to see if it would be finished. Lo and behold, I see G doing another Let's Play on his channel and think, wait, that's out now? And I dove over to Steam to buy and finish it before bothering to spoil it for me any further. So now I'm here to spoil Aggelos for you instead. I don't understand me either. Well, I'm very likely going to end up pronouncing this game's name as Aggelos. Apparently some general translation issue involving a quirk of the Greek alphabet. It's actually supposed to be pronounced Angelos. I'll probably just randomly switch between 2 pronunciations, and pedants can argue it all out in the comment section. The game's look is very retro, harkening back to, as it claims on the store page of Steam, the 16-bit graphic days, but keeping colors and sprites very simple to possibly pass for a well-made 8-bit game, in most parts at least. The art style does go ham on larger enemies, bosses, and projectiles, with some impressively and very Wonder Boy-inspired enemy designs, taking up massive amounts of space, while tossing out massive amounts of projectiles to go with it that would make an NES, SNES, or Mega Drive cry for mercy. It's the kind of game that fits in so well with those old-era platformers that people on my stream are asking me what system it was on, and if I was allowed to be using emulators on Twitch. Didn't know that was a thing. So they got the style down pretty damned accurately, I guess. Music also fits the old-school vibe to an impressively accurate but potentially far more annoying degree. In fact, the soundtrack is very chiptuned to the point of 8-bit, very short loops that can be a painfully common thing. A lot of the overworld music is nice, but the cave and dungeon themes are very Zelda 2 inspired and unfortunately the most repetitive of all, barely lasting a minute before looping again. It's about the best way to drive off anyone watching you play this game when you get to hear that dungeon loop playing for about a half hour because I had no idea where the final lock in the air dungeon was. And yeah, that started to grate on everyone. Soundwork also sticks faithfully to that retro chiptune style, though I'm really suspect about this rain effect used in the air temple. Like, did they actually record Falling Rain for that part, or is someone just such a master of the sound chip that they made it sound like a recording of Heavy Rainfall? Because if it's the latter, kudos! So, the first and foremost obvious influence to this game is the Wonder Boy series. Like, this shouldn't even be up for debate. I can see people toss in Zelda 2 on occasion, but temple entrances and a downward stab does not make a Zelda 2 clone. And one of the game's creators calls himself Wonder Boy Bobby. Bobby? I'm just gonna take a wild guess and say that it's a far more accurate comparison to be making. Control is the kind of simple thing that gets far more complex as you move on, but it never seems out of reach. While you start the game with some simple jump and sword slashes, you get the previously mentioned down stab, an insanely useful upward momentum slash that basically opens up most of the game with what's essentially a double jump, and there's more movement options available to you, as well as a couple magic skills to augment that movement beyond the simplicity of just being attacks. It's the kind of game designed for a controller, which is why it's so frustrating that so many controllers don't seem to work, and those that do have an issue with the D-pad compatibility. While it's certainly playable with an analog stick, such directional inputs can end up feeling like unresponsive garbage when you're unable to use a digital input. The developers claim to be trying to iron it out, but they advise using Joy-to-Key if you're having issues. Hopefully they solve it by the time the apparent Switch version's supposed to come out. Better be able to use a fucking D-pad for that. Since Magic can also augment movement and control, it's best not to just skip over their little intro tutorials. Just learn what does what. Earth can be used to create platforms, allowing you to skip decently large sections of the game if you know when to use it, even before you get the upward slash. The bubble created from the water element can be used to swim upward underwater and float downward slowly in air. You can also detonate it for an AoE burst. Fire is a long-range shot that can also be converted into a teleportation portal, which will allow you to pass through gates and do some really clever boss-killing strategies. Wind is a short forward dash that can pass through enemies and cause you to run at high speeds or get across gaps without losing any height. Of course, each of these options are held within dungeons, so you won't have such an open arsenal right away. Which leads to the game's general Metroidvania feel of needing item A to enter Area B unless you find a clever workaround. The game goes with unlocking those non-elemental movements with the Instructor Scrolls. You find the Mole, the Flea, and the optional instructors of the Woodpecker and the Firefly to gain all of them. Since Mole and Flea are required to complete the game as intended, you'll find them through normal play. Though I never really count out speedrunners after watching that interesting movement system of Iconoclast get a shoot in favor for using a glitch to swim to the final boss. The Firefly requires you to complete a few other optional things before he'll grant you his useful boss-destroying skill, but the Woodpecker...
prepare for salt? See, Woodpecker doesn't want to just give you his skill, you have to go through this mini-dungeon of puzzle challenges first. Some will teach you about mechanics that you may or may not know about the game already, while others are simple timing-based brain teasers. And then you get to... the room.
Fuck this room, fuck it to all hell, and ultra fuck it if you're trying to do it with a keyboard or an analog stick. The basis is simple. You have no access to powers. You have to kill every enemy in the room, and you'll notice very quickly that a lot of that will depend on bouncing with the down slash, which will annoyingly like to just not work sometimes. Then mix it in with upward slashes to gain extra height, some of which will accidentally kill the enemy above you that you would then need to bounce on at the next area. This also means you have to consider your positioning, all while rapidly switching between up slashes and down stabs, hoping none of the inputs mess up and cause you to do something unintended. If you mess up once, you start the entire room over again. You pass the room, and the final puzzle is a pushover. Just don't talk to the statue until after you've talked to the Woodpecker. I cannot imagine the unfiltered sodium chloride that would erupt from that potential mistake.
As for the skill itself, it's aggressively okay. It's this Hadoken-style input that causes you to toss out this quick triple stab, and while it's great if you can reliably pull it off constantly, you're gonna do more than fine without it. But if there's any danger that the end result will have you heading to Home Depot for some paint and spackle after you've chiseled your controller out of the wall, you can reliably just skip it.
Though I doubt the Woodpecker Trials would even be your first foray into shouting at your screen, though the game starts out so easy that most people would assume it would remain that way. Even some of the earliest bosses don't take that much effort if you keep your attacks up. However, once you arrive to the volcano area, dear God.
I swear at times this game feels like it has difficulty spikes that would make Vlad the Impaler salivate. Once you head into that volcano, everything hits you like a truck, and sometimes the enemies will take tons of hits to kill, and every single one of them, even the swarm enemies, still take off huge chunks of your health. Unless you spent most of your time getting level grinded before you headed into the volcano, you'll probably get destroyed on your first few trips in here.
You're forced into using one armor, the only one that'll allow you to not take constant quick damage in the volcano, and it just feels weirdly suboptimal, despite the fact that there isn't any stronger armor available to you yet. At this point, unless you just ground out a double-digit level, everything's gonna hit for a ton of hearts, rendering you herbless and potionless by the time you've reached the already challenging dragon boss. XP doesn't seem to come across as flashy, and it's not even well outlined what your levels do, but they definitely do something.
I'm not really a fan of this game's bosses as is. I mean, well, most of them. A lot of the time they just end up seeming like damage sponges with very few or very simple mechanics to the fight. The first boss is a great introduction to combining your powers with combat, but the remaining portion of the fight is just beating down a hopping skull. The remaining elemental bosses feel just annoyingly tanky despite their more interesting phase mechanics. Well, I'll say for that Air Temple boss, like, I don't feel there was really much strategy to that one. I'm probably wrong though, but it's weird that it's the only boss that has healing items in its room.
I do tend to like the final few bosses though, even if they're not all that different, and they feel more like mini-bosses, with the dark portals opening and you entering to face down the creatures within them. They have some pretty creepy designs too, with a floating evil-eyed spiny ghost creature and one of the McDonald's fry guys. Take both down and you face Valiant, whose vicious attack pattern consists of flying around in circles while magic orbs try to zap you. Take him down and you face the true final boss, a hulking shadow monstrosity that engulfs most of the room that you're in.
Now, seeing this the first time, and remembering all the clever detail of all the other bosses, really makes you wonder what this is going to end up looking like. Aw, he's adorable!
You take down the final boss, head back to the throne room for a cutscene, and receive your thanks and rewards. Until... Oh, well, I wish I could say that came out of nowhere, but...
Yeah, you were an angel the whole time. And the game pretty heavily telegraphs this twist early on, though. You'll hear rumors about how angels are required to play the lyre, and it's the only instrument that you end up finding, and yet you still know how to play it. There's rumors of angels coming to the world and being something as simple as a shopkeeper. The seer refuses to tell you what your destiny is after saying he would once you find his crystal ball. And for heaven's sake of a terrible pun, the game's name, Aggelos, is Greek for angel. It's not like you didn't have any clues.
So you vanish into the sky, the world is safe, and erecting statues to you as thanks for freeing them from the darkness. But the princess is still distraught, shedding a tear for you as we see the castle's residents remembering you fondly.
Oh, sure, let me guess. She sheds the tear and the statue flashes and you come back down to Earth somehow and live with her happily ever after. Oh. Alright. Way to avoid the cliché, game. Well done.
It's not an overly long experience. It took me about 6 hours or so during my first playthrough, as I was obnoxiously trying to find everything I could, while my second playthrough to collect footage only took me about 3 hours. The price tag seems to put some people off, but I think it's a worthwhile investment if you think that this is something you'd enjoy.
Whether you're into the Wonder Boy series, enjoy retro-styled games, or just hoping for a solid action RPG platformer, Aggelos should work wonders for you. It's a solid but fair-feeling challenge, even with that sharp jump in difficulty at times, and there's nothing a few attempts for that won't overcome. With that, Aggelos earns a go rating from me. There might not be much overall as far as the game's content goes, but there is plenty of reason to want to play again and see how much you've improved from the last time. So, give it a shot and see if it grabs you until one of the other Wonder Boy-inspired games is released. I always appreciate you making the stop, and I hope to see you on the next one.
Have you given Aggelos a shot? Played it to 100% completions already, or is this literally the first time you've heard of it? Fan of the Wonder Boy series, perhaps? Tell me all about it in the comments. Also, I guess you can still do that like and subscribing thing, and you know, clicking that bell icon so that they'll actually tell you when a new video is out. God, this website's an awful trash fire. Come watch me live at twitch.tv/chaosd1 if you're not already, and pray attend in my Weeaboo Wednesday streameth, which is currently laughing through Octopath Traveler. You can also watch me cook during some evenings with my shitty laptop mic and camera, or just wonder why I go days without streaming. Again, this show. You can even watch Indie Stop debut on there live on the appropriate Friday at noon Eastern, provided I'm not late, right before it goes officially live on YouTube. Remember, I am more than willing to hear suggestions for indie games that you want to see covered on the show. I have no shortage of potential titles to look at, but I am always up for new stuff and suggestions. If you want to force your way into the queue, I have my Patreon you can choose to support the show at, with tiers specific to Indie Stop and MMO Grinder, like early access to Indie Stop episodes before they go up in the Friday time slot, giving direct suggestions to me, or having me make a pained attempt to pronounce your name in the credits. This episode, I'd like to give a verbal thank you to my raid leader and higher supporters, Nate McPherson, Neander, Kaizme, Sonic Rose, and A. Smith. Thanks for watching and supporting, and I'll see you on the next video. Which, in case you couldn't tell, this one was already late, remind me not to try a weekly schedule next month. Hopefully we can close the month out with a good one next week. I guess you could say getting it out on time is my one concern.